At my daughter's beach wedding, just as the sun dipped low and painted the ocean in shades of gold and amber, her new husband leaned toward me with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. The waves rolled gently along the shore of Cape Cod, fairy lights swayed above us, and soft jazz floated through the air. It should have been a perfect moment. $50,000, he said calmly, swirling his drink. That's what it costs to stay part of our lives. Otherwise, after tonight, you disappear. I stared at him, unsure if I had heard correctly. His name was Nathan Caldwell, polished, wealthy, and painfully confident. Before I could respond, my daughter, my only child, Isabella, tilted her champagne glass and added casually, "Or you could enjoy the quiet life in a retirement home, Mom. No stress. No drama. It's really your choice." They stood there together, flawless and unbothered, like they were offering me a reasonable business deal instead of emotional exile. Their certainty was stunning. I smiled. I raised my glass and said softly, "You forgot one thing." For a brief second, the air shifted. A gust of sea breeze lifted my shawl, and the sound of crashing waves filled the silence. I noticed it then, the slightest hesitation in Nathan's eyes, the faint tightening of Isabella's jaw. They hadn't expected resistance. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't argued. But something in my tone unsettled them. What they didn't know was that I hadn't arrived at this wedding unprepared. I hadn't come to be embarrassed or erased. I came knowing exactly who they had become, and what they thought I was. They believed I was weak. Old. Disposable. They had forgotten that I had once built my entire life from nothing. "You forgot one thing," I repeated quietly, then excused myself to powder my nose. I walked away with steady steps, leaving them standing beneath the lights, unaware that the storm they had triggered was already in motion. I was 28 years old the night I walked away from my old life. Boston was drenched in rain, the kind that soaked you through in seconds. The windows of our cramped apartment rattled with every gust of wind, but inside, it was the silence that frightened me most. My husband Daniel Moore lay sprawled across the couch, passed out, his anger spent for the night. My cheek throbbed where his hand had landed earlier. I didn't bother checking the mirror. In the hallway stood my 4-year-old daughter, Isabella. She was barefoot, wearing faded pajamas, clutching a stuffed bear so worn its fur had thinned. Her eyes were wide, quiet, and heartbreakingly calm. She wasn't crying. She had learned that silence kept her safe. That was the moment something inside me broke, and rebuilt itself. I moved fast, like someone acting on instinct rather than thought. I grabbed an old duffel bag and packed what little I could, Isabella's favorite clothes, snacks, our passports, and a hollowed-out copy of Pride and Prejudice. Inside it, I had hidden $243 in cash, saved dollar by dollar. When I lifted Isabella into my arms, she wrapped herself around me. "Are we going on an adventure, Mommy?" she whispered. "Yes," I said, my voice shaking. "The biggest one." We slipped into the rainy night and boarded a bus to Dorchester, where an old friend had offered us her couch. It wasn't much, but it was freedom. 2 weeks later, I found a tiny one-room apartment. The heater clanked. The wallpaper peeled. It smelled faintly of old cigarettes. But no one screamed there. No one hit me. Isabella slept through the night. I worked mornings at a diner, afternoons at a dental office, nights cleaning offices. I was exhausted, always, but we were safe. That night wasn't my lowest point. It was my beginning. Isabella grew up strong. She studied relentlessly, and earned partial admission to Northeastern University. The day her acceptance letter arrived, she danced around our tiny kitchen like she'd won the lottery. "I did it, Mom. I really did it." That night, after she fell asleep, I cried. Tuition loomed, and scholarships didn't cover everything. So I worked more. Years later, after graduation, she called me close to midnight. I found a storefront, she said breathlessly. Brick walls, hardwood floors, big windows. It's perfect, but I need help. How much? I asked. She hesitated. 98,000. It was more than my savings. But I had a retirement fund, modest, steady, untouched. The next day, I met Helen Brooks, a longtime friend turned legal advisor. She insisted on paperwork. You'll keep 51% ownership, she said. Just in case. Isabella signed without reading. The boutique opened 3 months later. For a while, everything felt fragile but hopeful. The boutique survived its first year. Sales were modest, profits tight, but Isabella worked relentlessly. She stayed late adjusting displays, negotiated with small designers, handled social media herself, and answered every customer email with care. I helped quietly in the background, restocking shelves after closing, covering unexpected expenses without mentioning them, and keeping the books balanced. Then one afternoon, everything changed. A young woman named Vanessa Hale, a rising lifestyle influencer with tens of thousands of followers, wandered into the boutique. She tried on a deep sapphire dress, admired herself in the mirror, and snapped a photo. That evening, she posted it online with a glowing caption about discovering a hidden gem. By morning, there was a line outside the store. Within days, inventory sold out. Local magazines featured Isabella as a rising star. More influencers followed. Customers came from across the city. The boutique expanded its hours, then its staff. In less than 6 months, Isabella was talking about leasing the empty space next door. I watched all of it with pride and growing distance. I only visited after closing. That was my choice. I didn't belong in her new world of polished mirrors, minimalist decor, and designer heels. I wore the same old sweaters and sneakers I'd owned for years, careful not to disrupt the image she was building. One evening, I came by earlier than usual, holding takeout to surprise her. She stood at the counter chatting with a well-dressed customer. "You've created something incredible," the woman said. "How did you pull this off right out of college?" Isabella smiled, glowing with confidence. "I built it from nothing," she said lightly. "Just hard work and vision. No one handed me anything." Her words landed like knives. I stood there, unseen, the bag of food growing heavy in my hands. I didn't interrupt. I didn't correct her. I turned around and walked out. Outside, I leaned against the brick wall, struggling to breathe. That was the night I realized I had disappeared from her story. Not accidentally. Not gradually. Deliberately. A few months after that night, Isabella met Julian Cross. She introduced him briefly at a Chamber of Commerce gala, where she was being honored as one of Boston's top entrepreneurs under 30. I had dressed carefully, a navy dress from a clearance rack, my hair professionally styled for the first time in years. Julian was polished, wealthy, and magnetic. The kind of man who shook your hand once and remembered your name forever. I saw it immediately, he liked power. And Isabella, radiant in her success, fit perfectly into the world he ruled. Within weeks, they were inseparable. Dinner plans were cancelled. Calls went unanswered. She was swept into his lifestyle, rooftop parties, wine tastings, weekends in the Hamptons. When we spoke, his name dominated every conversation. "Julian says the boutique could go global. Julian's parents know investors. Julian is teaching me how real businesses scale." Then one day, I learned about their engagement from social media. A photo appeared on my feed, her hand resting on his chest, a diamond sparkling in the sun. I said yes to forever. No phone call. No warning. 2 days later, I received a message that wasn't meant for me, a screenshot from Julian to Isabella. Your mom can't sit with my family at the dinner. Put her at the vendor table. My parents would be horrified. I waited for her defense. None came. Instead, she texted me minutes later complaining about floral costs. That night, I stopped by her apartment unannounced. She wasn't home, but her laptop was open. On the screen was a document outlining strategies to keep me out of sight while maximizing my financial support. After the wedding, distance would be easier. That's when I called Helen Brooks. Helen didn't ask questions. She never did when it mattered most. We met the next morning in her home office, legal pads spread across the desk like battle plans. I asked one question. If I activate my majority ownership, what can I do? She didn't hesitate. You can audit every account, freeze funds, revoke contracts, and take control of operations. I nodded slowly. I won't act unless they give me a reason, I said. Helen studied me. What will be the trigger? I didn't answer. But I knew. Over the next few weeks, I gathered everything: emails, spreadsheets, irregular transfers. I stayed silent. Polite. Invisible. Then came the wedding. On that beach, under fairy lights and soft music, Julian delivered his ultimatum. Isabella echoed it without hesitation. That was the trigger. I walked away calmly, heels clicking softly against stone, heart steady. I didn't go to the restroom. I walked down the boardwalk, sat on a weathered bench facing the ocean, and sent one text. Sandcastle time. 7 minutes later, the business froze. Envelopes circulated among investors. Phones buzzed. Panic spread through the venue. Isabella found me first. Mom, what's happening? I'm exercising my rights as majority owner, I said evenly. Julian's confidence collapsed. His father's face darkened. Investors whispered. I protected my investment, I continued. Something you forgot I had the right to do. Isabella cried. Julian raged. I listened quietly. Then I turned and walked away. 3 miles down the beach, Helen waited in her car. She smiled and opened the door. For the first time in decades, I wasn't someone's safety net. I was free.